Welcome to Audiobook da Morgan. Today's reading is Utz, chapter 30. But before we start, please subscribe on my channel and press the button to activate notifications.
Chapter 30. The clatter of saucepans died away, to be followed a few minutes later by the sound of sizzling fat. "You'll eat with me," he said. "I will," I said. "Thank you. Do you mind if I use your bathroom?" Utz pretended not to hear. "Do you mind if I use your bathroom?" He flinched. His face became contorted with a nervous tie. He fumbled with a cufflink, shot an agonised glance in the direction of the kitchenette, and pulled himself together. Ja, you may do that," he stuttered, and ushered me past the double bed into an immaculate bathroom with a frieze of green and lilac Jugendstil tiles and a bathtub on which the enamel had worn thin. I closed the door behind me and saw an astonishing garment. Suspended from a hook there was a dressing gown, but instead of a plaid or camel hair dressing gown, this was a robe of quilted, peach-coloured art silk with applique roses on the shoulders and a collar of matching pink ostrich plumes. The scenario suggested by this unexpected costume set my imagination into turmoil. I pulled the lavatory chain. Outside, above the rush of gurgle and the water, I heard Utz and Marta remonstrating in Czech. He was waiting to hustle me out of the bedroom. I was not to be hustled. I paused to admire an 18th century engraving of a fireworks display at the Swinger. I saw a photograph of Utz's father. I saw his illustrious decoration on its mount of black velvet. I saw a Venetian blackamoor bed table and, on it, a book by Schlitzler and one by Stefan Zweig. I saw a large container of talcum powder, or was it face powder, in front of the dressing mirror. I saw three other and unexpected items: a rosary, a crucifix, and a scapula of the Infant of Prague. The frilly lace lampshade had been singed by its electric light bulb. The flounced pink curtains and pink satin eiderdown, both of which had seen better days, gave the room an atmosphere of musty, rather coarse femininity. I looked at Utz afresh in the light of this discovery. I looked at his shiny scalp. Was there perhaps, hidden under the skirts of the dressing table, a wig? He was unable to look me in the eye. Instead, he tinkered with the gramophone and put on a record, a keyboard sonata by the Saxon court composer Jon Dismas Zelenka. The maid reappeared and laid two places on the glass-topped table, banging down the knives and forks with a show of bad temper. She turned her back and returned with a larger Meissen dish on which were arranged some pork chops, sauerkraut, and dumplings in gravy. Utz ate with dulled concentration, pausing now and then to mouth a little bread, sip a little wine, but scarcely saying a word. He blinked at me, apparently furious with himself for having invited this inquisitive foreigner who had disturbed his peace of mind and might, in the long run, cause trouble. He cringed whenever the maid showed her face. After helping himself to seconds, he began to relax. He had cut a cube of meat, impaled it, held it in the air, and addressed me pedantically. Each time I see a piece of pork on my fork, I must remind myself that pork and porcelain are the same word. "Really?" I said. "How's that?" "Really? You don't know it?" "Really not. So I will explain." He reached for some of the shelves and handed me a small white cowrie shell, an ordinary specimen of Cripian moneta. Did its shape, by any chance, remind me of a pig? "Why not?" "Good," he said. "We agree on that one also." Cowries, he went on, were used as currency in Africa and Asia, where they were traded for ivory, gold, slaves, or other marketable commodities. Marco Polo called them porcelain shells, porcella, in Italian was the word for little sow. He let out a perfect hiccup, probably caused by the sauerkraut. "I apologise," he said. "Don't mention it." He then produced, as if from nowhere, a bottle of translucent white porcelain which dated from the epoch of Kubla Khan. He had bought it in Paris before the war. Wouldn't I agree that its glaze resembled that of a cowrie? I would. Thank you. His next exhibit was the photo of an almost identical bottle in the treasury of St. Mark's, an object which was said to have arrived in Venice in the bags of Marco Polo himself. "So now you understand about pork and porcelain." "I think so," I said. "Chinese porcelain," he continued, "was one of those legendary substances, like unicorn horn or alchemical gold, from which men hoped to drink the fountain of youth. A porcelain cup was said to crack or discolour if poison were poured into it. Marta cleared the table, served coffee, and opened a box of Carlsbad plums. Utz hiccuped again and bombarded me with a flood of questions. Had I been to China? Had I read the letters of Father Matthew Hitchell or Father Dzianjowski's description of porcelain manufacture? How serious really was my understanding of Chinese porcelain? Under the Sung, the Ming, the Qing. From the 17th century, he said, the emperors of China had made a colossal impact on the European imagination. They were thought to be very wise and to live to a very great age, dispensing arbitrarily impartial justice according to laws derived from earth and heaven. They drank from porcelain. They built pagodas of porcelain. The smooth and lustrous surface of porcelain corresponded to the smooth, unwrinkled surface of themselves. Porcelain was their material, as gold was the material of the Royal Soleil. And even today, Utz added flippantly, our Soviet friends are never too poor to pay for gilding. Then would you say, I interrupted, that your Augustus's porcelain mania was conditioned by legends of the Yellow Emperor? Say it? Of course I would say it. And not only kings love porcelain, philosophers also. Leibniz was crazy for porcelain. Leibniz, who had believed this world was the best of all possible worlds, believed that porcelain was its best material. The maid stood motionless in the hallway, fixing her employer with a hostile stare, as if requiring him to end the interview. He took no notice. Now, will you look, please, at these two little persons? These were a pair of identical statuettes of Augustus the Strong, wreathed as a Roman emperor and standing like Tweedledum and Tweedledee amid the Dresden ladies. They were not modelled with much sophistication, yet had the concentrated energy of an African fetish. One was made of red Botticher ware, the so-called Jasper porcelain. The other was white. Tell me, said Utz, what do you know about Botticher? Not much, I replied. He began as an alchemist and then invented porcelain. He may have invented porcelain, but even that is not for sure. I reached for my notebook. He reeled off a synopsis of Botticher's career.